Welcome guys and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be continuing with the alternate future of the world series. So it's been a while since the last one, so sorry if some things I say make no sense with what I said before. I tried to rewatch some things and remember some things, but I'll try and make it work out. So today our first event is going to be a big one. You remember this alliance over here in the east, the Russian alliance? Yeah, that alliance needs more land. So they're gonna go ahead, look around. Okay, well, here, let's bring up the old map. So this is the old map. We have the red team and the pink team. And where can they go? They can't attack the blue team because that's the NATO of this world. And they don't want to fight India because that could bring in the blue team. So they only border one more alliance, and that is how Iran declares war on Saudi Arabia, which causes the entire Gulf Shield Force Defense Treaty thingy. And with that, it really looks bad for Iran, but not when they call in some of their allies, so Russia joins in. And if you look here, the pink team is one of the strongest, leading to all of their allies joining in on their side. With that, I don't really see how this new force has a chance at all. But I mean, they'll try. With that, Iran instantly begins to roll over Kuwait and send troops into Saudi Arabia. These capture a good portion of the north until the Saudi Arabian military arrives to put a stop to it. With that, Saudi Arabia pushes back. If you're wondering how, when it's all of this versus this, it's because this is only Iranian troops. Pakistani are close by though, and they'll be getting help from their allies very soon, just not quite yet. With that, Iran is being pushed out as the blue team want to try and negotiate a peace deal, a white peace, where they don't lose much land. That isn't going to work though, as Pakistani troops begin to arrive and back up the Iranians, leading to Iran pushing back into Saudi Arabia heavily, until eventually they all saw what Saudi Arabia was trying to do, and luckily for the red team and unluckily for the blue team, nobody fell for it. With that, they begin to push down the coast, trying to capture Riyadh. This goes unsuccessfully though, as the battle is won by the blue team. Once again, this still isn't the full red team military. This is not just the Iranians, the Pakistanis, maybe some Central Asians. With that, they continue to push around the coast and capture Qatar, which in this timeline is a very rich and powerful nation, considering its size at least. With that, they begin to push into the UAE, capture Dubai and Abu Dhabi, or something like that. Their capital is similar but different. With that, the UAE is the second country to completely collapse after Qatar, and red team troops begin to flood into Oman, as the country had sent most of its troops into Saudi Arabia and was not prepared for an attack. Muscat is captured, and they won't survive much longer. With that, the push into northern Saudi Arabia continues, as it's mostly just desert, but any land is any land, and the red team needs any it can get. With that, a few countries actually decide that it's not worth it staying in this war. And that's just Jordan, who joins the U.S.'s alliance and leaves. Basically, they didn't want to do this, but Saudi Arabia, Oman, they all wanted it to happen. They don't want the red team to take too much land from them, and they know they're going to lose. With that, Iran continues to push into northern Saudi Arabia, connecting up with the Red Sea. And after the second Battle of Riyadh, which ends in an Iranian victory, they capture Mecca, which, when it's Muslim against Muslim, it doesn't matter as much, but it's still a very important city. With that, they just push around the coast of Oman a bit, along the coast of Saudi Arabia, and both countries surrender. With that, of course, NATO, or whatever I'm calling it here, is not very happy. They worked closely together with the Saudi Arabian military pact, and it falling is not good for them, as it means the red team can't expand. With that, we now see a good portion of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait going to Iran, while the countries are turned into sort of puppet/vassal states of the red team. Not very good for the countries. Their economies tank as it's being exploited by the red team. And overall, that was a huge loss for NATO, the US's alliance, I should just call it. With that, that is not the only country we will see falling here today, as there's one more very expansionist pact. And if you're wondering what that is, it is right here. It is the pink team. I mean, not the pink, the red African team. They just want land, and once again, they can't attack the blue team. So where do they go? They go for East Africa. With that, a lot of these countries I just mentioned, including Egypt, Libya, Chad, Sudan, South Africa, whatever's left of Zimbabwe and Zambia, Angola, etc., join in against the DRC, the East African Federation, Somaliland, and Ethiopia. And Eritrea. With that, the red team has a lot of control and influence over this region. And that will be really shown with their complete destruction and utter obliteration of what's left of the East African Federation, which is actually doing pretty well for itself here. Maybe it could have actually united with the DRC to form more of a Central South African. But on the topic of South Africa, their troops begin to push up into southern East African Federation. I'll just call them the EAF. With that, the red team also goes along the coastline of the Congo, capturing Kinshasa and Brazzaville, two of their largest cities. They push into whatever's left of South Sudan and Ethiopia. With that, the Congo's already falling, as a majority of it is now just jungle, which you really want to expect in Africa, but in the Congo it is true. They also push along the coast of Ethiopia, capturing Somaliland, Addis Ababa falls, and the entire country surrenders. Once again, a lot of red team, and this isn't the same as when Iran invaded Saudi Arabia, that it was only them fighting. The entirety of the red team was ready for this, had their troops on the border. This was a planned out invasion. With that, the DRC falls, along with Ethiopia, leaving just the East African Federation, which soon after surrenders in hopes of not being made into a puppet. Hopes which may actually play out. At least a little bit of them won't be made into a puppet. With that, we see Sudan actually gaining the most land here, with them connecting up down here in Victoria. I think that's what it's called. And in Ethiopia, they gain a whole lot of land. This new Central African Republic also gains themselves a good bit of land, as besides Angola gaining some here in the south, along with Zambia. The rest of this is given over to form a new Central African Republic. We also see South Africa being given land along the coast, and Zimbabwe is given enough land for their troubles. The rest of the East African Federation is split into Kenya and Tanzania. The East African Federation and Kenya. With that, all this land is either puppeted or annexed, as their huge hope of not being puppeted did not come true. The red team knew that they were going to win, and they didn't bother sparing any of the blue team from the absolute obliteration they faced. With that, once again, just in case you've forgotten by now, Angola, they gained a good bit of land out of the DRC. In this scenario, they are stronger than they were in real life. They've gained land from these wars, so Angola is doing well for themselves. South Africa is doing very well for themselves. They're one of the leading nations in this African alliance, and a very important part of it. With that, they actually decide to incorporate what's left of Zimbabwe into their country, as their economy is failing. Even with their new land, all the wars left them crippled, and their economy is still doing horrible. Almost as bad as it is in real life, present day. With that, Zambia is actually allowed to survive, not annexed by South Africa, but they're not doing so great themselves. With that, as I said, the Congo is turned into the Central African Republic. Their government is modified, to say the least, and united with the Central African Republic that was already on that dark red team. With that, is Sudan the largest country in Africa now? I probably have to give it to Sudan. The Western African Federation, pretty strong. South Africa, strong. Would they be the strongest? Maybe, maybe not. Actually, no. For their surrender, the East African Federation was allowed independence, but as I said, Kenya was taken out of the alliance, same thing with Ethiopia, and incorporated into the red team. With that, what's left of, I guess you could just call it Tanzania now, as that's mostly what it's made up of. Some northern Mozambique, Malawi, Burundi, Rwanda too, but it's mostly Tanzania. Joins the US's team in return for protection against this African power. With that, there's going to be one more event. If you didn't know, there is the huge alliance down here in South America between Brazil and pretty much all of the surrounding nations. Yep. No, not French Guiana. Right along here. So yeah, this alliance exists. It's allied with the US, and then there is actually the US's alliance along here. So yeah, what's the USA gonna do here? They're gonna get themselves some more allies with Chile, switching alliances, along with Guyana, Argentina, Paraguay, and Peru. With that, Brazil's alliance still exists, but a lot of South America is switching to the US's team, as they see no point in having two alliances that serve the same goal when you could just have a one larger protection. This leads to Brazil finally accepting defeat and not having their own alliance, and all of South America is incorporated into the US's alliance. So yeah, the East is expanded, so is the West, and we actually see a new deal being made by the, I guess, African alliance and the East with Russia and China. Russia, China, Egypt, Western Africa, Sudan, and South Africa all meet over here in Beijing, the capital of China, to discuss arrangements. They ally themselves, not in an actual alliance, but they basically say if either of us go to war with the US, we'll join in on each other's side. So, probably next time, big war, be ready, and I'll see y'all then. Bye.